And so the game follows the events after growing up with Neva on her own.
Gotcha. So inside you, there really are two wolves.
There really are, dog. Absolutely. Yo, what is up, gamers and indie fans, and welcome to Game Gems, the show where we go hands-on with the latest, sometimes not so latest, cool, small, hidden gem video games and give you our initial impressions. As always, again, it's a Game Awards edition here at The Gamer. Today we're checking out Neva, the drama action platformer from Nomada Studios. I am Christian Macias, and joining me is video lead Peter Hunt-Spitek. Peter, you ready to get a little emotional, dog?
I'm always ready to get emotional. I'm always ready to be there with you. Just the question is, are you ready to be there with me?
I will. You want to know why? Because on all levels
Please.
except physical, I am a wolf.
Oh, is that right? I see. I have two wolves inside of me. So that's interesting to hear from you.
Specifically this wolf right here, Neva.
Yeah. So can I ask? This is the big question. From what is the name of this studio?
Nomada.
Nomada. That's right. Because they're like Spanish, right? From Spain.
I believe so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, one of their. I know one of the spellings of Nomada has like an accent on their studio.
Got
as well.
it.
Yeah.
Well, so is it Neva? Because their games always.
Yes.
I have a hard time pronouncing it because their previous one was Greece or Gris or.
It's Glee, I think, because I think it was supposed to be French. I think.
Okay.
But in this game, you can call out to Neva, and believe you me, I spent a lot of time just calling to the dog with max volume, trying to really parse out how you say this game, and I believe it is. Here we go. Neva.
Okay.
Neva.
Okay. So you have you played this entire thing? I've not. This is the first I'm seeing of this. I mean, I know when it came out, I saw a little bit of it, but
yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I played it in 2 sittings. Not a very long game. Certainly, I'd say meaty. But you can sit through it in 1 or 2 sittings, depending on how long you're willing to sink into it. And had a good time. So you said this is the first time you've seen this game in motion,
First time
right?
seeing it in motion. This thing is gorgeous, to be honest with you.
That is the thing, man. Immediately, I skipped some of it. There's a pretty lengthy intro cinematic. It's about 5 or 6 minutes long, and it is stunning off the bat. And that doesn't let up for the entire runtime because of the way they do art style and moving subjects within that art style. It's pretty stunning to see, just as you walk through it here. The sort of intro sections is mostly kind of just moving to the right of the screen, but later on they get really crazy with the art style. It is, I think, probably up there in terms of the best art direction of the year.
It was nominated for that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty stunning. You'll see some of it towards the end of the video here.
So I understand that there is some combat in this as well, but is this mainly a platformer? Because I mean, obviously that's what you're doing at the start of this. We'll get into combat later, I'm sure, but
yeah, I called it action platformer because it's about 50-50 between these kind of intensive platforming sections and then surprisingly difficult combat. There is a difficulty setting in this game. You can do a story setting. You can do a setting where you don't die, essentially. So you can get past combat sections with that on. However, as I've read online, there's no settings for getting you through platforming sections with any sort of settings in that regard. And some people had a lot of frustrations with the platforming because I kind of agree with them. Some of them are really precise, and it's I don't know if I can make this jump. I barely can make it, and that the game is asking you to do it regardless.
Interesting. Gotcha. But so you're hanging out with Neva. Is it a dog or a wolf or?
It is a spiritual wolf, a wolf with magic powers, if you will.
Okay. What are we going to see some of these magical powers? What can Neva do?
It is kind of amorphous. It is some kind of nature power, where the howl will bring about rejuvenation. Of course, this game is very typical of the indie games of the past 10 or 15 years, where you are kind of pushing back the darkness to keep the light, or keep the land free of any kind of like blight or darkness.
Sure.
Or a kind of simplistic story in that regard.
Seems a little like was it Ori, in terms of this bright white animal is coming to save the forest.
Sure.
Oh wow,
stunning.
Yeah.
And I cut about half of the sequence. Yeah, man. I will say, Neva is a game that takes place over like several seasons, and so you kind of get to grow with your companion. There's a little bit of a storyline there.
Gotcha. How story heavy is it, or is it more like vibes with implied story? You know what I mean?
Vibes with implied story. I mean, it's all nonverbal. There's very few cutscenes. There's a few that happen. I'd say maybe like less than 5. And they're all like pretty lengthy, and they are like big moments, but most of the stuff is happening in real time like this, and it's kind of implied storytelling, and you kind of gather what your read is on certain things.
Sure. I mean, yeah, this is just incredible looking. So when you say like emotional, is it like emotional just in the sense of like, ooh, bring the sword out now? You mean business? It's just emotional in the sense of like, you're following this relationship between you and your Neva, or? Yeah,
I mean, I skipped over it just for the sake of this video, but the intro cutscene, spoilers for the intro cutscene, if that's important. I know some people it might be. So
I guess it's fair. Yeah.
In the intro cutscene, you are traveling with Neva, and then your other spiritual wolf, who is like the mother of Neva. And when you're attacked in the forest by the blight, and so there's like a sacrificial moment, and so the mother saves the protagonist here and Neva. And so the game follows the events after growing up with Neva on her own.
Gotcha. So inside you, there really are 2 wolves.
There really are, dog. Absolutely.
Gotcha. A lot of like puzzle platforming, like we sort of just saw, or is it relatively basic?
Plenty of it, and plenty of side stuff to do that as well. Pretty often through chapters, there'll be like just a small little side path you can take that will lead to a little collectible thing. It's no more than just a flower and a mark on your menu. You don't really get anything for it aside from maybe an achievement if you get all of them. But the challenge of doing said platforming section is usually pretty. I like them.
Can I ask, because we just saw Neva there get grabbed by these sort of spectral hands. Like, I guess without spoiling anything, like, is there much like I'm trying to think of how to say this, like distressing animal content?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I would say certainly. There are lots of moments. Usually when I finish something, I tend to read either backlogged reviews or other journalist reviews, and sometimes the Reddits. And I've seen 2 or 3 people in various platforms say like, maybe there should have been a warning for some distressing animal. You know what I mean? It's not frequent, but there are sections.
Because for me, if it's tasteful, then it doesn't really bother me all that much. Ooh, kind of a ground pound move. But yeah, like I think you're right about just like having something at the start saying like, hey, just so you know.
Yeah, for sure. One note on combat,
which is okay, Yeah, go ahead.
One note on combat I forgot to mention. It's a little simplistic, right? You have like your basic attack is a 3-move combo. You have a ground pound. You have like an air slash. You can dodge. One thing I like is that if you take damage, you can recover your health by doing damage.
See, I always like that.
Yeah, so the more hits, the more these little flowers there at the bottom of the screen that are your markers for health will grow back.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever do you expand that at all, or is it just the 3?
It is just the 3 the entire way through.
Gotcha. See, I think that's such an interesting mechanic. I'm interested in games that have been like embracing that idea of like, okay, to get health back, you're going to actually want to be more aggressive. Like obviously like Bloodborne is the
yes, sir.
The one to point to. But I think about like, I really like the system in Lies of P because that had a similar sort of rally system, but then also it had the thing where it's like, if you've used all your healing items, you land X amount of hits, it will recharge your healing item by 1.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
That was clutch in that game. Yeah, I agree. And it's the same thing here where I would have very intensive combat moments and be down to the 1 and I would have to just go aggro really focus on my dodges and my timing and I would get health back and suddenly like the tide of the battle has shifted. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And just it encourages you to be aggressive and to, instead of like trying to be on the defense, just say like, nope, time to go,
Absolutely.
Which I think really impacts the flow of combat. You said it's relatively simple. You said you got the 3-hit combo, the ground pound, the air slash, whatever. Is that the extent of it for the most part, or does it get more
No,
complex as you go?
It expands, but it's also a little bit of a spoiler-ish. I'll be vague here. So I mentioned that this game takes place over multiple seasons, and you kind of grow up with Neva. As Neva kind of awakens her powers, you start being able to include some of her moveset in both traversal and in combat.
Does Neva get a sword? Can I ask that? Is that a spoiler?
And Neva does not get a sword, but man, wouldn't that be cool?
Well, what's the point? What's the fucking point?
I know,
then?
dude. Yeah. You ever played Dark Souls?
What's that?
You ever played Dark Souls?
Oh, like what's it?
Yeah.
Sif?
Yep.
Is that the dog? Also, did you ask, have I ever played Dark Souls? Are the enemies pretty much just this, or do they also sort of change as the game goes on?
No, there's a few. This is just like all like intro kind of section.
Yeah, right.
It is mostly the same. Like it will be mostly those basic enemies or the quadruped kind of enemies and the ones that throw.
Yeah,
those will be the bulk of it. But there are different enemies, the varieties of the kind of similar style.
So, Christian, you will have up on thegamer.com, no space. You this weekend are going to have an article go up about why each of the games nominated to win Best Indie Game of the Year at the Game Awards. You're going to have an article going up about that. How does Neva stack, do you think, against the other games? What makes this game so special and, a nominee and a potential winner, in your opinion?
I'll tell you, because we also have a video going up with Eric Schweitzer on the sort of entire category this year for Best Indies. And consensus, I think, for me is that I'm a little bit torn on Neva. I think the story is strong in isolation. I really much enjoyed it. But in context of the other indies and in context of where the industry is now, I almost felt like it was a little bit too simplistic. Like what I told Eric was, it feels like a story ripped from the era of like between like 2010 to 2013. Like that would be the
Very
kind of
limbo-esque, huh?
Yeah, no, not even that, but like the kind of simplistic like thematically like light beats the dark kind of story that was like really big in the games industry of that era that you could see that would like sweep awards because there was just no other game doing kind of storytelling quite like that, simplistic but powerful. And now 10 years later where we've seen many games do things like this, it almost feels like I've been here before. So with that, to have games like Balatro, Animal Well, and Lorelei, and UFO 50 in that conversation, it kind of complicates my feelings of the game writ large, because those games were unique in ways that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Despite this being strong in isolation. So it's kind of, it's a mixed feeling for sure.
Can I ask a question? And like, this is perhaps a larger discussion, but I'm speaking more specifically about this game. Like, is there something to the idea though of like, okay, yeah, those games might be doing something new, but like this is doing something tried and true, but it's doing it well. You know what I mean? Would you say that this is a good example of a game that is the light versus the dark, sort of like 2010s indie game, or like, you know what I'm asking?
I'd say yes, and like certainly the scores I think for this game reflect that, because it did land with most people. I think the biggest thing it has going for it is that like it is a thematically simplistic story, but it's doing that via, you know, this story between our protagonist and Neva. Like that is the means to tell that story, and it is good. I agree with that. Sort of personally, the larger themes didn't land as hard with me by the end. But it might for you. It might for you.
Sure. Can I ask too, like in a game like this, you said you beat in like 2 sittings, right?
I did, yes.
About how long did that take you?
Let's say
2 sittings is like 4 hours or so?
Exact, give or take 4 hours. I split that time between PC for capture and then Steam Deck just to try it out, because I know you mentioned it last time, and I did, and it was indeed fantastic on Steam Deck.
Perfect. But it does, like, for me, if a game is a little simple but good, but simple, you know, sometimes it starts to wear thin. As you know, you get to the 3-hour mark or so for me, where I'm just like, okay, I see where
this is going. Sure.
Yeah, and obviously this has the visuals, I think, to back up, like, to keep things interesting and stuff like that. But would you say that this is a game that like really compels you to keep moving forward, or does it wear a little thin when you start getting up in the hours?
It wears a little bit thin, but I think on that side it's not length. It's sort of combat scenarios like this. Where like in a chapter you sort of get the gist of what combat looks like, and you'll have to do multiple little events in like here's the room where you're going to do the combat section again, you know. And that almost gets in the way a little bit with like where the story is at that moment. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to call it padding, but it can feel a little bit thin in that regard, sure. But it's nothing to do with story side.
And you know, I'm not you know, asking you to dog on this, no pun intended.
Wow.
It truly wasn't. But you know, it is like, I like to be critical of games that I like. So I hope no one takes this as like, you know.
No, and I like this game and I liked this game.
Yeah.
Make no mistake, Peter Huntspatek.
Any reason to go back to it once you finish it? Like, I know you said collectibles and stuff like that, but they're pretty simplistic.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you want to go back to replay any certain sections that you thought were fun, or like it'll, if you go by chapter, you can see where you've missed the sort of side little, not collectibles, but like the side platforming sections. You can go back and find those. Other than that, replayability, like that's it. You know, you come for the story. You see it, and if you feel like you've gotten what you want out of this game, you can call it a day there.
That's all you need, though. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like
yes.
And I don't think there's anything, you know, wrong with that. Like, you just
absolutely,
this is what the game is.
Yes, for sure.
Because you know, we mentioned like Limbo or Inside, like same thing, right? Like no reason to play that game again. I mean, you know, other than to experience something great. But
Peter, that was Neva, and this was this week's Game Gems. #TGGG. Let us know what you think of Neva down below. Will it win Best Indie Game of the Year for all things dramatic, action platformer? Make sure you stick with the gamer.